Texas and Oklahoma were off to the SEC, USC and UCLA were off to the Big Ten, and the Big 12 was realigned. In the Conference of Death, we were projected to finish mid-table, and even though we lost a lot of starters, we were ranked as the 39th best team in the country. I decided to redshirt 5-star freshman Scott Gandy, so Mike Wright won another QB battle, but Jacoby Criswell was ready to come in if needed. Senior linebacker Anferni Orji was the head of our 92 overall defense, and we were opening up the year against a top 25 team. This is the best possible way we could have started the season. Sophomore receiver James Parker took the kickoff, he made a move, and he took it for 6, setting an NCAA record for the longest kick return ever. Then, our new starting running back Preston Smith scored his first career touchdown the next drive. But despite our hot start, UAB got within 3 right before halftime. However, Mike Wright wanted to start the third quarter off right, and he put on a show running for a 27-yard touchdown. Unfortunately, by the end of the third quarter, UAB tied the game, and then Mike Wright made a terrible throw, and that was the last we would see of him in today's game. Using their great field positioning, the Blazers scored a touchdown, but North Carolina transfer Jacoby Criswell had a chance to earn the starting spot, and he found sophomore Brian Canary for a touchdown on his first drive. On a crucial 3rd and 9, our defense came out and they locked up in every way. Then, with not much time left in overtime in our sights, Criswell threw up a bomb that senior Will Sheppard was somehow able to run under, which put us in field goal range, and Joe Samuel nailed a 52-yarder to get us the win. Jacoby Criswell had earned the starting job, and it was time for us to finally beat Memphis. We were the first ones on the board, and after Memphis scored, Criswell and Canary responded with this touchdown. Midway through the second quarter, we punted it, and the ball hit the Memphis player's helmet, and we were able to recover the ball, which led to this touchdown throw to senior and new starting tight end Justin Ball. On the last play of the half, we used Mike Wright to pull off the fake, and we threw a dot to Rocco Griffin. At the start of the fourth, Criswell threw another touchdown, but that didn't stop Vandy killer Seth Hennigan from trying to make it a game. However, there simply wasn't enough time left. We had finally beaten Memphis, and we needed to carry that momentum into our Week 3 rivalry game against Ole Miss. This was a must-win game if we wanted to be a top 25 team, and Will Sheppard started it off right. However, at the start of the second, Jacoby Criswell didn't get the ball out of his hands, and we took a safety. But he was able to bounce back mentally, and he delivered a huge dot to sophomore running back Patrick Smith. At halftime, we had held the Rebels to just 2 points. They did drive down the field late in the third, but we were able to get the clutch stop on 4th and 2. And learning my lesson last time we were this close to the end zone, I ended up calling a running play, and we just got the ball out of danger. However, on the next play, Criswell threw his first interception at Vanderbilt on a jump ball, and because of that, and Henry Parrish's ability to break tackles, Ole Miss was right back in the game. Fortunately, on the next drive, the Rebels pressed us, and sophomore James Parker put on the burners for a touchdown, and on 3rd and 19, we should have stopped them easily and just ended the game, but they somehow were able to pick it up, and we were even able to force a fumble later in the drive, but we couldn't recover it, so of course, they ended up scoring a touchdown to stay in the game, but we recovered the onside kick, ran out the clock, and beat our rivals. Going into our bye week, we were finally ranked, but we had 2 very tough games coming up. I really hated the new layout of the SEC East, but we had our undefeated season on the line at home. We started the game off, moving the ball down the field really well, and we were able to find Will Sheppard in the back of the end zone early. Criswell was definitely not afraid to just sling the rock, but sometimes that's not always a good thing, as he threw a bad interception right to Auburn, and so all of a sudden, the Tigers had all the momentum and they tied the game. However, Jacoby Criswell stepped up in the pocket and he let it fly. This monster catch from James Parker would put us in such great field position that we were able to respond right back a minute later. It didn't stop Auburn from going right back down the field and scoring again though. However, it was time for another jump ball. It was what we did best, and Brian Canary went up, snagged it, and took it to the house right before halftime. We started off the third quarter kicking 3, but Auburn made sure they were going to keep the game a close one by scoring right after, and then they followed that drive up with a laser to the end zone. We were starting to move the ball, but Jacoby Criswell took off, and he couldn't hold on to it. This led to the 3rd consecutive Auburn touchdown, and on 4th and 10, to keep us in the game, Quincy Skinner Jr. couldn't hold on to it. We put up a good fight, but it wasn't enough to beat the Tigers. Despite Nick Saban retiring, Alabama somehow retained Bryce Young and Will Anderson for their senior year. However, they had already lost 2 games without Nick Saban, and we ended up finding James Parker in the end zone on our first drive. However, Alabama's offense was nearly unstoppable, and they continued to score and score and score. In the third quarter, we were finally able to stop Bryce Young, and then we followed it up with a touchdown. And after holding Alabama to 3, Jacoby Criswell had a chance to help us tie the game, and he threw a deep bomb to Brian Canary, and he caught it, and he was able to run all the way for a touchdown. Tie game. Unfortunately, we weren't able to stop them on the next drive. Then they locked us up, scored again, and when I thought all hope was gone, somehow Quincy Skinner Jr. got wide open and we were able to get right back in it. But in the end, we couldn't stop Alabama from running all over us, and we came up short of the win. It was time to bounce back, and Middle Tennessee State was the perfect opponent for that, until Criswell completely missed James Parker and turned it over on the first play. And then when we had them locked up in the backfield on 4th and 1, Frank Peasant broke all 3 of these tackles to somehow score. Late in the first quarter, on 3rd and 18, nobody was open, so Jacoby Criswell rolled out, and he threw a deep bomb to receiver James Rutledge, which gave us a 4-point lead. It was honestly remarkable how easily Criswell could loft the ball in the air and hit our receivers in stride, as we hit Will Sheppard for a deep touchdown as well. And despite the Blue Raiders' effort to stay in the game, Criswell was on fire, and we went into halftime with an 11-point lead. Midway through the fourth, we had a 7-point lead, but Criswell wasn't done, throwing for his 6th touchdown of the game. But I couldn't believe Middle Tennessee State was able to stay in the game by scoring a touchdown right here. They really weren't giving up, but all we had to do was run out the clock. And so I did something stupid and tried to throw a simple pass out of Wildcat, just to have some fun, but I shouldn't have done that with the game on the line as we turned it over. Anyway, our corner Josh Fletcher had an easy chance to end it, but he couldn't hold on to the ball. And then Javon Reed made this contested catch on us that should have never happened. So of course, after we had got them all the way to 4th down, they scored, and we had actually choked. Until, all of a sudden, our stud kick returner James Parker broke free, and he went the distance to save the day for us. We were going to survive. It wasn't pretty, but a win's a win. Undefeated #1 Georgia was going to be hell, and it started just like you'd expect, a Bulldog touchdown. And after they had scored another, Brian Canary decided that he had had enough, and he stepped up to keep us in the game. However, Georgia went right down, and they scored again. Our offense hadn't been great, but we couldn't get a stop if our life depended on it. Then Georgia ended up getting one of the wildest interceptions I'd ever seen. I challenged it, and despite the ball being on the ground before he ever caught it, they didn't overturn the interception call. And after that play, something changed. I'm not sure what, but the team started playing way better, and Criswell threw this amazing deep ball. On the next play, he found Justin Ball in the end zone for the touchdown, and midway through the third, Justin Ball caught another touchdown by outrunning the whole Georgia defense, but we were still down 17, so we went for the 2-point conversion and got it. And then we threw this jump ball up, which should have been an interception, but Will Sheppard somehow came down with it, and he took it all the way to the house. Going into the fourth, we were right back in it, so we threw another dot to Will Sheppard, and Patrick Smith walked it into the end zone to tie the game. And then it happened. While threatening to score, somehow Vanderbilt threw a pick to us, and we took that ball all the way down to the other side of the field. From there, we ran out all the clock, and Joe Samuel got us our biggest win in program history as time expired. The Jacoby Criswell era was officially back on track. After a bye week, we were playing at South Carolina, and we were looking to pick up right where we left off. That's exactly what we did, with Justin Ball getting into the end zone on our first drive. However, on a very long 3rd and goal, South Carolina somehow managed to get into the end zone. Midway through the second quarter, Criswell ran in to score a touchdown, but by halftime, it was 14-all. Unfortunately, our first drive in the third quarter went south when Criswell fumbled the ball and they took it for 6. And then later on in the quarter, South Carolina took a 14-point lead. From there, the rest of the game just continued to get worse and worse for us, as we ended up losing 42-28. In week 11, we were traveling to the Swamp, and a bowl game was on the line against one of the best teams in the country. It didn't start off well, as DeMarcus Bowen had over 100 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns before the end of the first quarter, and it just continued to get worse and worse for us, no matter what we did. But midway through the second quarter, we finally found the end zone. It was false hope though, because we were never able to make the game close, and we walked out of the Swamp defeated. It was time to take out all of our frustration on Kentucky, and by the start of the second quarter, we were already going up 17-0. I'd love to say the domination lasted, but we were only up 6 going into the half. However, we started out the third quarter by finding Will Sheppard in the end zone again, and then later on in the game, Criswell couldn't find an open receiver, so he scrambled and dove all the way for a touchdown. We ended up winning 41-21 and becoming bowl eligible, so we were going into rivalry week against Tennessee with momentum, and on the first play of the game, James Parker made a cut, he got some great blockers, and he was able to take this all the way to the house. However, Tennessee responded right back, and they scored a touchdown themselves. We did try to pull off a fake punt this season with Mark Bird, and then he broke a tackle, and nope, he didn't get it. By halftime, it was a very tight game, and even though we were down 4 to start the fourth quarter, Jacoby Criswell made an amazing play, finding Will Sheppard and giving us the lead. After Tennessee went down and got a touchdown of their own, we had 51 seconds and no timeouts. But then, Jacoby Criswell fumbled the ball again, causing us to lose to Tennessee for the first time. With 1 game left in the season against Texas, I decided to let Mike Wright start for us. But with less than a minute left in the half, we still hadn't scored until Mike Wright was able to connect with senior Will Sheppard. And by the start of the fourth quarter, we were able to find Brian Canary over the top of the Longhorn defense, and then a couple plays later, we went back to him and scored. After holding Texas to 3, We had a chance to go down and score, but we weren't able to. And after a whole season of struggle, I decided I hated the new SEC. The only good part about the season was making a bowl game. Anyway, Miami, Ohio's Brett Gabbert won the Heisman with 52 touchdowns, and we were playing Colorado in the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl. Senior linebacker Ethan Barr won the Bednarik and the Butkus, while senior right end Nate Clifton won the Lombardi and the Nagurski. The college football playoffs were set, and Miami, Ohio ended up beating Utah, while reigning champions Ohio State snuck by Florida. And in the national championship game, the Heisman winner came just short of pulling it off. Mike Wright wanted to go out with a win, so early in the first quarter, he threw a bomb to James Parker, but the next play, he threw an interception and wasted a whole opportunity. Midway through the second, we still hadn't scored, but instead of taking our three, we faked it. Criswell rolled out, threw a dot, and Rocco Griffin blew it. After this play, I realized Mike Wright's time at Vanderbilt had come to an end, so Criswell started the second half for us, and he delivered a dot. But Will Shepherd dropped what should have been an easy touchdown, and the whole team was playing terribly as we still hadn't gotten on the board. But fortunately, we finally figured it out as Brian Canary caught a touchdown pass. But when we needed a big stop on defense, I ran commit assuming they were going to kill the clock, and they put the game out of reach instead. Somehow after our big win against Georgia, we completely collapsed, but that was not going to fly next season.